With my mom, ever since I was a little girl, my mom has okay, so my mom went through a lot when she was young, back in
Mm,
DR before she came to the States. It was my grandma who came first,
mm,
and she left my mom with her siblings and my grandfather over there in DR. And
mm.
my mom went through a few things. And I feel like she never healed from that. And not that I feel like she didn't. She never did. And she noticed that my grandma was not like that, that she was very, like, she wasn't an affectionate person. She would show love in the way that she would show love. She did notice a favoritism between her and my uncle, her brother, her younger brother. Um, so, but my mom was a daddy's little girl. So my grandfather was obsessed with my mom. So she always had daddy's love, versus my uncle didn't have daddy's love, but had mommy's love. So the breakdown that I did was this, because I know my grandma's background. My grandma's mom died when she was 2, and then she was brought into an orphanage in DR of just women. And
Oh,
these women back in the days in DR, she was born in the time where Trujillo is a dictator from back in the
yeah.
days,
Mm-hmm.
in DR, and he was very corrupt. He was the one who murdered the Mirabal sisters. I
Right,
don't know if you've
yes.
seen the movie with Salma Hayek and
Yep.
Mark Anthony. Yes, so he was the one who ordered their murders, because the one that he was with, didn't want to be with him or whatever. Yes. So, in DR around the 1930s, he was corrupting whatever. And I feel like a lot of women in that time, a lot of everybody, period, there was the living based on survival. Everybody just needed to survive. There was no, I don't feel like there was any room at home for any kid to actually hear, I love you. Oh, come give me a hug and a kiss. Because everybody was just always thinking about, how are we going to eat today? We need to pay this rent, and we need to make sure how Trujillo is not going to come and kill us. That's all it
Right.
is, you know? And so, these women in this orphanage, let alone the fact that nuns already have that harsh, like, attitude to them. And back in the days, it was legal, it was okay for a nun to whip you. So in my mind, my theory is that my grandma grew up in an orphanage home where she was not at all, not once, probably given a hug, you know, or nothing
Right.
like that. And she was probably whipped up till she did the thing, the right things or whatever. She was basically whipped into place. That's what I feel happened with my grandma, which is why her her hobbies and her career, like, go-to's were always working for other people, because that's what you do
Mm,
when you're in an orphanage. You're always doing for others. You have to clean, you have to, you know probably help in the kitchen, whatever. So my grandma was always cooking and cleaning other people's houses, um for money and stuff. And I feel like she probably always carried the resentment, that the pain that of the pain that these women caused her emotionally, and probably even physically, like. So it might be that her mind, her body just had this auto response to not be affectionate at all towards a woman, let alone with
right.
the personality trait that she already had because of her childhood. So she
Right.
probably just already, like, just naturally always went to boys, like, had this favoritism towards boys. And with my grandmother, I mean, with my grandfather, she says it till this day. She's still alive. She has dementia and Alzheimer's, but she remembers a lot. And she still says it to this day. She was like, I was never in love with your grandfather. I got with him because I needed to survive. I was a woman. I was 28 years old. And in DR, if you're 28 with no kids, you're already considered, I don't know how to say it in English, but jamona. Yeah, yeah, basically like an old maid. Like, that's what she was like. I didn't want to be one of those. So, he fed into my head, swooped me up. He was a barber in town for famous baseball players at the time. And I got with him. But I knew he was with other women. I was never in love with him. I just needed somebody to put food in my table and take care of whatever kids he was going to impregnate me with. Boom. So that already is a thing. If you're creating a family out of out of she did get married, so it was not out of wedlock, but there was no love there was no actual tie, even though there was a legal tie. That already is going to do a lot in the household, because who knows the arguments that my mom underwent when she was at home with my grandma and my grandfather and my uncle too. Like, We don't know that. So
Yep.
I don't know how my grandma must have been as a wife. I know my grandfather, he's a lot like my mom. Like in my family, he passed before I was born, so I didn't get to meet him or anything. But from what I hear that his attitude, my mom is literally his replica. So I can just imagine as a man how he was. I do know that my mom tells me stories that when he would come home drunk, my grandma would have to rush the kids into the room, tell them to get under the bed, because he would come and try to like just fight, you know. So he probably put hands on my grandma. I don't know. And when my grandma left and the things happened to my mom felt alone. She blamed my grandma. She was basically like, oh, you left me alone. She was a child. She didn't understand that my grandma needed to come to the States to create a better life for her. And at the time, my mom was only thinking about the pain that she had went through. I don't want to like I myself am creating my own YouTube channel, so this is something that I'm eventually gonna have to get comfortable with. So I don't really want to like I don't feel comfortable with it, but I kind of feel like I can trust this conversation right here and this recording, even if you do share it, I don't mind. But because it wasn't spoken about, I feel like it's because it's why she's like this today. But my mom was raped, but her first
Oh,
rape, yeah, her first rape, she was 13, and like, you know, she was a virgin, so it was very traumatic to her. She got pregnant, and when somehow it went across town that the guys who raped her impregnated her. So it was one guy, but multiple guys then kidnapped her one night, and they took it to an alley, and they performed a cold-blooded abortion on my mom. Yeah, I'm sorry. My mom felt alone. She blamed my grandma. She was basically like, oh, you left me alone. She was a child. She didn't understand that my grandma needed to come to the States to create a better life for her. And at the time, my mom was only thinking about the pain that she had went through, and she was scared for my grandfather to know, because she knew that my grandfather was gonna try to hunt down the person and the other people who did it to her and kill them. So, you know, my mom, I don't want to like she felt alone. She only had the comfort of my sisters. I mean, of her sisters, my aunts. But you know, they were teenagers too at the time. So it's like, what can they do? You know, they can't do much. And my grandfather, like, my mom was scared to tell him, because he already knew, like, he already heard the whole everything, but nobody knew about the abortion part. So like my mom was really scared to even confront my grandfather about anything that happened. So she still felt alone, you know. And then my grandma, like, she basically like when she told my grandma lived in she lived close to where we live now, because where my mom lives now is my grandma's old apartment. But
um,
and like she didn't she felt like my grandma, like I said, my grandma is not an expressive person. She don't know how to emotionally express herself. My mom has never understood that it's okay to not be a person who emotionally expresses, and for it not to mean, you know, that, oh, that means that you don't love me, that means that you don't love me. And it's because my mom's traumas, you know, like, she felt like she
yeah,
wasn't loved just because she felt like she was alone when everything was happening through to her, you know. So and when my grandma found out, like, my grandma was actually going to jump off a roof from the building that she lived at, like she was going to commit suicide. And a neighbor stopped her. Like, a neighbor was rushing up the stairs right when she was about to fall off. And so that did a lot to my grandma. It did a lot to my mom. My grandfather, I'm not sure. Nobody really talks to me about what he was feeling at that time. um so I'm not sure, but eventually my mom came to the States, My grandfather came to the States. My mom had met my brother's father in DR. They were friends when they were younger, but then they like reconnected again when she came to the States. She got pregnant fairly young. She was only like 16, got married in the projects in the lobby, like Rio, whatever. But it was like basically um my uncle started getting into heavy drugs when he was 16, because no, when he was 14, because when my mom was 16 my grandfather died, and it did a lot to my mom, because she was very close to him. And when he died, my mom would get like these seizures, these weird seizures, and my grandma had to take her to DR to get a cleansing, because somebody told her that my grandfather wanted her, like he wanted, like it was weird, like some weird, some weird like
Yeah.
spiritual
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah, so my grandma had to take her to Haiti to get leaf baths by a babalao. um
Yeah.
and my that's when my uncle, he got into heavy drugs, really heavy drugs, because of he didn't know how to cope with his father's death. And there was never a connection there. There was never a conversation of, yeah, I did always have love for you. It was always that tough man to man attitude, um
Right.
versus he would see the cuddly love that he would give my mom. um but yeah, so he got into heavy drugs. My mom and my grandma's relationship was always rocky after that, because my mom said that not once had she ever heard my grandma ask her, what was it that happened to you, like, tell me what happened, like, come in for a hug, I'm sorry. My grandma never did none of that from my mom. And my
Wow.
mom felt, she always felt like there was just no real love, no connection there. But I know my grandma loves my mom, she just has her
Yeah.
own way of loving all of us, and I don't want to blame her. She raised all the women in my family based on survival skills. We all grew up the same way. We all grew up that thinking that crying is bad, it's for the weak, that we're supposed to just, take it like champs and just keep moving. So my aunts, they grew up like that. They raised my cousins like that. It's a lot of girls in my family. So the girls, they're all like that. Like, I'm the only one. I'm the only one that's here trying to, like, looking at everybody from the outside in. And I'm just like, wow, like, we got a lot to heal, man. What's going on with the women in this family? Like,
Yeah.
you know, um, so we were all basically raised on survival skills. Like, even my mom herself, she was a sentimental person who was, like, at the same time very disconnected from other people's emotions, but only wanted people to consider her emotions. Like, whenever she would cry, she wanted everybody to, like, be by her and console her and tell her that everything's
Right.
gonna be okay. But if anybody was crying around her, even a child, she wouldn't know how to be there for that child. And it's because nobody was ever there for her, so she didn't know how to do that for another person. Like, when I was a kid, I would cry, and she would like hug me a little bit, but she'll be like, ja, just stop crying, go play, you're good, that's it.
Yeah.
So it was very, like, always like, stop crying, stop with the tears, I stop. My favorite, I don't want to say my favorite aunt, because I, like, messed up to my other aunts. But my aunt, who I had a closest connection to, she passed away in 2003. Right, I was 8 years old, and she passed away. So it hit me. Her death hit me really hard. Like, it was really bad. Like, for a like, I was like, I was acting really weird with my mom. Like, I was angry. Wait, basically, I was just angry. Um, and I always kept hearing the whole, because these DR doctors, no, these New York doctors, they killed her. They weren't supposed to open her breast up. They killed her. So, being an 8-year old, hearing that your aunt could have lived and that she's dead
Right.
because of some doctor's malfunction or whatever, I was more angry. So I was always, like, crying and in a bad mood and stuff like that. And, like, my mom even, like, she got mad at me at my aunt's funeral for crying, like, stuff like that, like. And I could never
Wow.
forget that, because it was traumatizing, it was embarrassing. Like, You know, like, this is the person I had the most connection with, even more than my mom. And you're literally in front of everybody in here, like, telling me off because I'm crying. Like, and then she would like giggle a little bit too, like, very dismissive about it. Like, she don't know how to, like, take in other people's emotions at all. When my uncle did also pass away. He passed away from AIDS. He caught AIDS from a heroin needle.
Wow.
Because of his yeah, because of his addiction. It just never got. And that's another thing that also, like, I think about it and it gets me mad. It doesn't get me mad. It used to get me really upset. And this is another thing. Like, I just have a lot of, I guess I had a lot of built up anger from everything that I
Yeah.
knew um caused all the damages to my family, but
Right.
never being able to speak about it. See, I'm the youngest. I was always seen as, um oh, you don't know what you're talking about, you young, or this and that. And also, since I was also conditioned to not let my emotions show, I knew that these topics would make me cry. Anything that I know can make me emotional, I try to keep away from my family, which is why to this day I always fantasize. Like, it's literally, it's been in my head for years, ever since my spiritual awakening, how to come up with an intervention with my family. And I don't know how, because I feel like I'm a cry and they're gonna laugh at me, not take me serious. They're gonna make me feel bad for crying in front of people, you know. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I feel disconnected from my own emotions, how to even bring it up to them. um but my uncle, like, I feel like his ish, his death also could have been prevented. But I'm a firm believer that everything happens for a reason, but
Right.
I do know for a fact that if my family would have not been as, emotionally dysfunctional as they are, we we would have been able to help my uncle a little more, because at the end of the day, it was clear why he had these issues. It was daddy issues,
Right.
and then my mom, I remember the day of my uncle's death. Before 9/11, we had gotten the phone call that he was in the hospital and stuff.
Okay.
um yeah, yes, he died November 2nd, on El Dia de los Muertos. So the vibe was very weird already
Wow.
around the house, because we Hispanics, so yeah, you know how we take that day.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember coming home from school and everybody was just like, everything, it felt like a dream. Like, everybody was just very, like, there was no emotions. And when I walked in, all I got from my neighbor was, "Oh, mommy, just go to the room, it's okay." And I was like, what's going on? And I hear my grandma in the phone, and this is the first time, this is literally the only time in my whole entire life that I ever saw my grandma crying. When I remember passing by her room, and all I seen was her on the phone, and she was like just screaming, like that scream that, like, does something to you. And
Wow.
it was like my mom was, like, in her room standing, um and, like, she looked very, like, in shock,
Yeah.
like, it's just like, I don't know, I'm sorry, because it's like, I literally, like, I have not revisited this day up until right now. Like, I think about it, but I don't know how to explain it. It's like, I don't know how to put it in a way that you could probably understand. Like, you see, when you, like, it's like as if the memory in my head is like, is like a corner. It's
Yep.
like streets. Like, I'm looking at it from afar. Like, I'm not trying to enter that block.
Right.
So it's
Right.
like, now I'm actually revisiting the actual day. And it's like, when I walked into the living room, which at the time was me and my mom's room, um, I just saw her standing there with her hands in her pocket. And she looked like, I think that was like that was like the first time that I had seen my mom like that, like, by far the first time that I had noticed my mom um look very, how you might call it, my mom is very, like, she's very quick with everything. Like, she's always like, she's always quick with reactions. Like, even if she's trying to suppress an emotion, she's gonna know how to
Bounce
repress
back
it
quick.
cute, yeah, with
Yeah.
like another emotion. And for the first time, my mom had nothing to say. She had no look in her eyes. She was just numb. Like she just looked numb. And I still haven't seen my mom cry for my brother, my I'm oh my god, God forbid, my brother, no, my uncle's death. So this day, like they went to DR that week and they buried him over there and everything. I did hear that they cried at the funeral because my uncle always had a way of sleeping, so his body like naturally turned his head while he was in the casket. So it kind of
Oh,
like did
wow.
something to my mom, my aunts, and my grandma and my other uncles and stuff. So that was kind of like the only story I heard when they came back. Like, and it wasn't even a sad, like they came back talking about it like it was gossip, you know. It wasn't even like there was still no emotions there. And I was always
Yeah.
I was just confused, like why is nobody crying though, like what's going on? And this is the reason why I don't know how to handle death. Like I think it comes
Right.
from that. It was seeing the way my family handled death. Like I don't know how to handle death. I'm awkward at funerals. I don't like to go to funerals. The funerals I've gone to, I've been forced to, and I do visit the casket or whatever, but I don't cry. Like I don't know how to cry. When I do cry, I don't want nobody to see me cry. So I just wear my shades basically, you know? Like
Right.
I feel guilty for showing emotions, and I'm working on that. Like I'm definitely working on being more emotional, but it's
Right.
still a hard time doing it with my family. Like I still can't do it with my family, you know? Like for example, uh because of my I don't know how to explain it, but like okay, so my grandma, like she had favoritism with my mom and my uncle. She liked my uncle more. With me and my brother, she liked my brother more. With my nephew and my niece, she likes my nephew more. Like she clearly has a thing with my grandma. um and for some reason that always made, like once I realized this, I for some reason always felt extra connected to I always felt extra connected to the women in my family. Like I
Right.
always knew that we were raised on that survival instinct where we're not supposed to cry, we're not supposed to show emotions. And me knowing this, seeing the nonchalant behavior of everybody else in my family, not caring about this, not noticing how it's actually hurting like our generations. That's, you know, it just made me more like mentally attached towards the women in my family. I don't know how to explain it because it's like
Yeah.
I can't physically walk up to you and give you a hug or a kiss. But if you're a woman and you're going through it for some reason, like I feel for you more than, and it might sound messed up, but I probably feel for you a little more than if I was to hear the same story from a man, just because of
Right.
my own conditioning. And I'm also working on that for sure. Um, but just because of my own conditioning, because I'm just like, you know, growing up, I grew up in a household where like there was no emotional connection. There was no like, you know, none of that. And I always feel for women a lot, like for some reason a lot. And my niece, she was born when I was 11, and I always say I raised her. I raised that child. Like she's literally my daughter, because my brother and my sister-in-law, they were definitely young when they had her, and very young minded as well, and still are actually, because my brother became my mom. I was the one who saw what was wrong with her. My brother was the one that when he would see how my mom would handle situations, he would look at her like the OG, like, oh yeah, that's my mom, that's how she handled it. And I'm there like, yeah, you're not supposed to be like that, that's mean, you know. But me, like, you
Right.
know, it was always like, oh, you a little pussy, oh nah, you can't let people step over you. Yes, I did grow up a yes man, and I did grow up with people stepping over me a lot. Yes, that definitely happened. And it also gave me a phase where I purposely wanted to not be a good person. I don't know if that's something that people have gone through, but I purposely like didn't want to, you know, I don't know, like it was weird. Like I just purposely wanted to act up at home a little more. I purposely started ignoring my friends. I purposely detached even more emotionally. Um, and it was because I just felt like I was doing the wrong thing, because everybody around me
Right.
was acting differently, acting so badass, and telling me that I'm the one that's like pussy, and that I'm gonna be the fuck up in the family because people gonna keep stepping over me, and that the reason why they don't got friends is because they real. And I'm just
Wow.
like, wow, no, it's literally the opposite. Like, that's
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah.
But yeah, so that's the thing with me. And the only one thing is, my father, he was definitely in the picture a lot. He definitely was. We didn't live together up after I was 4 years old. um but I was always in his house on the weekends, and I'm a daddy's little girl. Like, he's literally the opposite of my mom, which is why they didn't work out. So
Right.
my dad was always the one to give me the parent speeches whenever my mom would call him talking about, I can't fucking deal with this girl anymore. Like, she would always just scream at me or whatever. But she wasn't realizing that the reason why I was acting like that with her and only her wasn't because my dad was a pushover or because I loved him more. It was because those were my outer responses at home. Like, it came to the point where just by walking into the room, I used to roll my eyes at my mom because I would just be like, oh my God, like, I know you're about to piss me off right now. And because she
Right.
always did. Like, my mom would enter the room and just ruin the vibe. Like, and that's not just with me, with the whole family. My mom had a deficit of 15 years between me and my her sister. I mean, between
Oh.
her and her sisters. And that it separated me and my cousins. I didn't speak to my cousins for 10 years. And the reason why my family's close together again, it was because of me. I reached out to everybody again and I was like, listen, I don't know what's going on between Tia and Mommy. And I know you guys, um, and I know you guys are probably also, missing this side of the family, but I know that with the way that we have been raised, ain't nobody gonna step in first because God forbid we lose our pride. But guess what? I'm here, your cousin, prideless, and I want you back. So what's up? And this was like 3 years back. Now finally we're together again. We're close. My mom and her sisters are calling each other again because I make sure they do. So I'm basically kind of like gluing the family back together. But you know, um, like, we didn't talk for like 10 years. Like, I had like my whole entire teenagehood I did not speak to my cousins, and I that made me miss them a lot. Like, I would have nights where I would cry myself to sleep, and I wouldn't even try to bring up the hurt to my mom because all I ever heard was when my grandma would bring up the girls, my mom would be like, I don't want to fucking hear about that shit, fucking fake ass bitches, because yeah, I don't call nobody, but is anybody calling me? All that type of shit. And I would just be like, yeah, ma, they're not calling you because you were the one who like, I'm not saying that you got to be the one to like come to the table first when you was the one who left the table. But at the end of the day, like, you guys all have this pride, and they definitely not gonna do it because they didn't do anything. And if that's the way of this family's thinking, then technically, yeah, you're
It's
supposed
not
to be the one to
nothing.
reach out first. You know what I mean? Like, you're the one keeping us apart. And she would get offended by that. Like, it's coming to the point where I literally don't talk to her at all like that no more. Like,
Yeah.
I tell her, if you're gonna bring me to the point where I'm getting out of character, I'm gonna be able to I'm just not gonna want to talk to you. I think I'd rather block my mom than sit here and entertain her and know that the only way to try to get through her is to become her. And I'm not doing that. So I wanted to be so I was always into the mind. Like, I always had um an interest in the mind. So I thought psychology was for me. So I went to school. But then just with everything, with how woke I am, I know that school is a part of the system. I'm not
Mm.
I'm not trying to demolish the whole idea. So, I'm not trying to encourage kids don't go to school as part of the system. Like, no. If you're going for a career that requires schooling, then yeah, you're gonna have to do schooling. You know what I mean? So that was
Right.
me. I thought I needed the schooling because I wanted to be a psychologist. I've always been into the mind, everything. But then I actually went through the schooling and was seeing the curriculum that they were trying to teach us. And to me, that's the reason why there's such a lack of mental health and a lack of mental health awareness structure. Like, even the way that we are awareing mental health, there's no structure in there either. Like, because everybody's so happy about, oh my God, finally mental health is being spoken about. Yes, it is, but it's also being contradicted a lot too. So
Yeah.
that gave me a lot of issues with school. I stopped school. I was like, nah, I'm not doing this. I'm gonna try to do my own thing and not need no psychology degree. So I realized, you know what, I need to open my own business, and it's gonna be along the lines of mental health advocacy. I'm looking to write books. I already started a few like pages on that. I'm going to make a podcast. I have a blogging page that I need to fix, but I have a blogging page on my Instagram. I already have a YouTube channel, but I only have like one video there. um I have an outline of everything though, like everything that I'm speaking on. I just literally gotta get a camera and record myself. That's all it is. And then
Yeah.
I'm gonna also open up a youth center in my community. There's no youth centers in my community, and that to me is ridiculous. And I'm a nerd, so I research a lot, and I realized that before and after the only few youth centers we used to have, the crime rates with and gun violence were literally over the roof. So that's what's happening right now. And I just feel like a youth center might not end the war, but it might just lessen the people who are battling in it.